Families are built in many different ways. Some are connected by blood, some are connected by love, and sometimes they are connected by sacrifices so extraordinary that they change lives forever. When Rachel and Nathan discover they cannot have a child, Olivia makes a decision that will alter all of their futures. Out of love for her sister, she agrees to carry the baby they have dreamed of for years. At first, the miracle brings happiness to everyone. A beautiful little boy named Ethan is born, and the family believes their hardest days are behind them. But as the years pass, fear begins to grow where gratitude once lived. Secrets replace honesty. Distance replaces trust. And a bond that was meant to bring a family together slowly tears it apart. This is a story about love, sacrifice, jealousy, family, and the consequences of hidden truths. Most of all, it is the story of a boy searching for the truth about where he came from and the people who shaped his life, because no secret stays buried forever. Olivia Carter had always believed that family was supposed to be the place where love was safest. She believed sisters were supposed to protect each other. She believed that when life became painful, family would be the first place a person could run. For most of her life, that belief had been easy to keep because her younger sister, Rachel, had always been more than just a sister to her. Rachel was her closest friend, her childhood shadow, and the person who knew almost every corner of her heart. They had grown up in the same small house, sharing a bedroom with pale yellow walls and old wooden floors that creaked at night. When they were little girls, they used to whisper under the blankets long after their mother told them to sleep. They made plans about the future, about the homes they would have, the children they would raise, and the way they would never let life separate them. Olivia was the older one, only by 4 years, but she had always felt responsible for Rachel. When their parents argued, Olivia was the one who distracted her. When Rachel cried after school, Olivia was the one who held her. When Rachel made mistakes, Olivia defended her before anyone else had the chance to judge. That had always been their way. Olivia protected, Rachel trusted, and for many years, it worked. As adults, life carried them in different directions, but they stayed close. Olivia married a gentle, hard-working man named Benjamin, and together they had 2 children, Emma and Jack. Their life was simple, sometimes busy, sometimes difficult, but full of warmth. Rachel married Nathan Brooks a few years later. Nathan was polished, confident, and successful. He spoke carefully, smiled easily, and always seemed to know what to say in front of people. At the wedding, everyone said Rachel was lucky. Olivia believed it too. Rachel looked radiant that day. She laughed during the photographs, danced barefoot at the reception, and hugged Olivia tightly before leaving for the honeymoon. "I can't wait to start our family," Rachel whispered. Olivia smiled. "You'll be a wonderful mother." At the time, neither of them knew how painful that dream would become. The first year passed with excitement. Rachel and Nathan bought a beautiful house on a quiet street. They decorated a spare room with soft colors, even though they never said out loud that it would one day become a nursery. Rachel talked about baby names, casually, pretending it was only a game. Then the second year passed, then the third. The nursery remained a guest room. The jokes about baby names stopped. Doctor appointments began. At first, Rachel tried to stay hopeful. She told Olivia that it was only taking longer than expected. She said the doctors were optimistic. She said there were treatments, options, possibilities, but Olivia could hear the fear growing in her voice. Every month brought hope, Every month ended in disappointment. Family gatherings became difficult for Rachel. Whenever someone announced a pregnancy, she smiled politely, then disappeared into the bathroom. Baby showers became impossible. Children's birthdays made her quiet for days. Olivia watched helplessly as her sister changed. The bright, lively Rachel she had known began to fade. She stopped wearing color. She stopped making plans. She stopped answering calls when she had bad news from the doctor. Then came the appointment that ended everything. Rachel called Olivia that evening, but when Olivia answered, all she heard was crying. "Rachel." No response. "Rachel, talk to me. What happened?" It took almost a minute before Rachel could speak. "I can't carry a baby, Olivia." Olivia sat down slowly. "What did the doctor say?" Rachel's voice broke. "My uterus can't safely carry a pregnancy to term. They said even if I get pregnant, it could be dangerous. For me and for the baby." Olivia closed her eyes. "Oh, Rachel." "I did everything," Rachel whispered. "Everything. Treatments, medication, tests, surgeries. I did everything they told me to do." "I know you did. It's not fair." "No," Olivia said softly. "It isn't." After that, something inside Rachel seemed to collapse. For weeks, she barely left the house. Nathan told the family she needed rest, but Olivia knew it was more than that. Her sister was grieving a child she had never held. Olivia visited as often as she could. She brought soup, flowers, magazines Rachel never read, and comfort Rachel rarely accepted. Sometimes they sat together in silence for hours. One afternoon, Olivia found Rachel standing in the empty guest room. The curtains were open. Sunlight covered the floor. Against the wall sat a small, white rocking chair Rachel had bought years earlier. Rachel touched the back of the chair. "I bought this before I knew," she said. Olivia stood behind her. "I remember. I was so sure." Olivia's throat tightened. Rachel turned around, with tears in her eyes. "Why can everyone else have what I want so badly?" Olivia had no answer. Some pain cannot be explained away. Some heartbreaks do not need advice. They only need someone willing to stay. Months passed before Rachel began speaking about options again. Adoption came up once, then disappeared. Surrogacy was mentioned quietly, almost like a forbidden word. At first, Olivia did not think much of it. Then, one evening, Rachel invited Olivia and Benjamin to dinner. The invitation sounded ordinary, but the moment Olivia walked into the house, she felt that something was different. The table was set carefully, too carefully. Rachel had cooked Olivia's favorite meal, but she barely touched her own plate. Nathan smiled, but his smile seemed tense. Benjamin noticed it too. Under the table, he gently squeezed Olivia's hand. For most of dinner, they talked about harmless things: work, the children, a new restaurant in town, the weather. But Rachel kept looking at Nathan, and Nathan kept looking down at his glass. Finally, after dessert, Rachel pushed her plate away. Her hands were trembling. "Olivia," she said softly, "there's something we need to ask you." Olivia's heart began to beat faster. "What is it?" Rachel's eyes filled with tears before she even spoke. Nathan leaned forward. "We've been speaking with a fertility specialist." Olivia nodded slowly. Rachel swallowed. "They said surrogacy is our best chance." The room became still. Benjamin looked at Olivia, then back at Rachel. Rachel started crying. "We have embryos," she said. "They would be ours, mine and Nathan's. Biologically, the baby would be ours. But I can't carry it." Olivia already felt the question coming before Rachel said it. Still, when it came, it took her breath away. Rachel looked directly at her. "Would you carry our baby?" No one moved. The ticking clock on the wall suddenly seemed too loud. Olivia stared at her sister. unable to speak. Rachel rushed to continue. I know it's too much. I know it is. I hate that I'm even asking you. But I don't trust a stranger. I can't imagine going through this with someone who doesn't love me, someone who doesn't understand what this means. Nathan's voice was lower. We would cover everything. Medical bills, time off work, anything you need. Rachel wiped her face. You would carry the baby for 9 months, and when he's born, he would come home with us. You would still be his aunt. Nothing would change between us. I swear. Olivia looked at Benjamin. His expression was calm, but serious. He understood immediately what this request meant. This was not babysitting. This was not lending money. This was not a small family favor. This was her body, her health, her emotions. 9 months of pregnancy, and then a goodbye. Rachel reached across the table and took Olivia's hand. You're my only sister, she whispered. You're the only person I could ask. Olivia looked down at their joined hands. She remembered Rachel as a little girl, climbing into her bed after nightmares. She remembered protecting her from bullies. She remembered promising, years ago, that they would always be there for each other. But this was different. This was bigger than any promise they had made as children. I need time, Olivia said quietly. Rachel nodded quickly. Of course, take all the time you need. But Olivia could see the fear in her eyes, the fear that time would turn into no. That night, Olivia barely slept. She lay awake beside Benjamin, staring at the ceiling while the house rested in silence around them. Benjamin turned toward her. What are you thinking? Olivia sighed. I don't know. That's a big thing to ask. I know. It could be hard on you. I know. Physically and emotionally. I know. Benjamin was quiet for a moment. Then he said, You don't owe anyone your body, Olivia. Not even Rachel. Olivia turned to him. I know, but she's my sister. I understand. She has suffered so much. She has. And if I can help her, Benjamin reached for her hand. Then we talk about it seriously. We ask doctors. We ask lawyers. We think about our children. We think about you. Not only Rachel. Olivia nodded. That was why she loved him. He was not refusing. He was not pressuring. He was protecting her from saying yes too quickly. Over the following weeks, Olivia met with doctors. She had tests. She spoke to counselors. She and Benjamin met with a lawyer who explained agreements, parental rights, medical risks, and emotional boundaries. Everything was written clearly. The embryo belonged to Rachel and Nathan. The baby would be legally theirs. Olivia would be the gestational carrier. She would carry the child, but she would not be the child's mother. Rachel cried when the lawyer said it that way. Olivia noticed. After the meeting, Rachel hugged her in the parking lot. I know this is hard, she said. I will never forget what you're doing for me. Olivia smiled softly. Just promise me one thing. Anything. Promise me this won't change us. Rachel pulled back, almost offended. Never. Rachel, I mean it. You're my sister. If anything, this will bring us closer. Olivia wanted to believe her, so she did. A month later, Olivia gave her final answer. Yes. Rachel screamed when she heard. Nathan hugged Benjamin. Their mother cried over the phone. Everyone called Olivia brave, generous, selfless. For a while, the entire family treated her like the woman carrying a miracle. Rachel sent her long messages every night. Nathan thanked her every time they met. Their mother said Olivia was doing the most beautiful thing one sister could ever do for another. And in those early days, Olivia believed it. She believed she was giving Rachel the one gift life had denied her. She believed love would be enough to protect all of them. She believed agreements, promises, and family bonds would keep everything clear. But years later, Olivia would think back to that dinner table, to Rachel's trembling hands, to Nathan's careful smile, and to the promise that nothing would change between them. She would wonder how a request wrapped in tears and love had become the beginning of the worst betrayal of her life. Because one day, after carrying her sister's only child for 9 months, after giving Rachel and Nathan the family they had dreamed of, Olivia would receive a message that made her feel like a stranger. A message that said she was no longer welcome. A message that turned sacrifice into scandal. And it all began with one question. Would you carry our baby? Saying yes was only the beginning. The moment Olivia agreed to become Rachel and Nathan's surrogate, her life began to change in ways she hadn't fully anticipated. At first, everyone celebrated. Rachel called her every day. Nathan thanked her repeatedly. Their parents told friends and relatives about Olivia's incredible generosity. For a while, Olivia felt surrounded by gratitude. But beneath the excitement, she knew there was a serious reality waiting ahead. Carrying a baby was never easy. Carrying a baby for someone else would be even harder. One evening, after putting their children to bed, Olivia sat on the couch beside Benjamin. The house was quiet. Only the soft hum of the refrigerator could be heard from the kitchen. "Are you scared?" Benjamin asked. Olivia smiled faintly. "A little. Only a little." She laughed softly. "Okay, a lot." Benjamin wrapped an arm around her shoulders. "You don't have to be brave all the time." "I know." "Then tell me the truth." Olivia stared at the family photographs hanging on the wall. "I'm afraid something could go wrong." Benjamin nodded. "That's normal. What if the pregnancy is difficult?" "We'll handle it." "What if I get attached?" Benjamin remained silent for a moment. Then he answered honestly, "You probably will." Olivia looked at him. "You think so? You carried Emma and Jack." He smiled gently. "You loved them before they were even born." Olivia lowered her eyes. She knew he was right. A baby growing inside her would never feel like a stranger, even if the child wasn't hers, even if she knew from the beginning that she would say goodbye. The thought frightened her, but she pushed it aside. Because this wasn't about her. This was about Rachel. At least, that's what she kept telling herself. Over the next few months, Olivia attended countless medical appointments. There were blood tests, ultrasounds, consultations, legal meetings, and psychological evaluations. Every step was carefully planned. Every form was signed. Every risk was discussed. The fertility clinic wanted everyone to understand exactly what they were agreeing to. The doctors asked difficult questions. Are you emotionally prepared to give the child to the intended parents after birth? Do you understand the medical risks involved? Are you being pressured in any way? Olivia answered honestly. No. No one was forcing her. She was making this choice herself. One afternoon, after another appointment, Rachel sat beside her in the clinic parking lot. Neither woman spoke for several minutes. Finally, Rachel broke the silence. "I still can't believe you're doing this." Olivia smiled. "I can't believe it either." Rachel laughed through tears. "I feel guilty." "You shouldn't." "But I do." Rachel wiped her eyes. "You're giving me something I can never repay." Olivia squeezed her sister's hand. "You don't owe me anything." Rachel looked away. "I'll spend the rest of my life trying." Those words stayed with Olivia. Years later, she would remember them with painful irony, because the future would look very different from what either of them imagined. A few weeks later, the embryo transfer took place. Rachel and Nathan arrived at the clinic early. Both looked nervous. Rachel held Olivia's hand while they waited. Nathan paced the hallway, When the procedure was finished, everyone returned home to wait. The next 2 weeks felt endless. Every phone call made Rachel anxious. Every symptom made her hopeful. Every day seemed longer than the last. Then finally, the results arrived. The pregnancy had worked. Rachel cried so hard she could barely breathe. Nathan hugged Olivia. The nurses celebrated. The doctors smiled. For the first time in years, hope returned to Rachel's life. And for a while, it felt as though everyone had received exactly what they wanted. The months that followed were filled with excitement. Rachel attended nearly every appointment. She bought pregnancy books. She downloaded baby tracking apps. She called Olivia constantly. "How are you feeling today? Any nausea? Did you feel anything?" At first, Olivia found it sweet. Rachel had waited so long for this. Every milestone felt precious. When they heard the heartbeat for the first time, Rachel cried. When they saw the baby's tiny hands during an ultrasound, Nathan looked speechless. Olivia watched them both and felt genuinely happy. Their joy made the sacrifices feel worthwhile. But pregnancy was not easy. By the 3rd month, morning sickness became severe. Some days, Olivia could barely keep food down. Other days, she felt exhausted before lunchtime. She still had her own children to care for. She still had responsibilities at home. Life didn't stop simply because she was carrying someone else's child. One evening, after spending half the day sick in bed, she received a text from Rachel. "Can you send me a picture of your stomach?" Olivia stared at the message. She understood Rachel's excitement, but she also felt strangely uncomfortable. The baby growing inside her had become the center of everyone's attention. Sometimes it felt as though people forgot she was a person. They only saw the pregnancy. She quickly dismissed the thought. Rachel wasn't trying to hurt her. She was simply excited. At least, that's what Olivia believed. As the pregnancy progressed, Rachel and Nathan became increasingly involved. They attended appointments. They discussed nursery decorations. They debated baby names. They planned birthdays that hadn't happened yet. Olivia often sat quietly and listened. The child was theirs. She reminded herself of that constantly. Still, there were moments when reality felt complicated. One afternoon, while folding laundry, Olivia felt the baby kick for the first time. She froze. A small movement, then another. Her eyes filled with tears. It was a moment she had experienced before with Emma and Jack, a moment no mother ever forgets. Without thinking, she placed a hand on her stomach and smiled. The baby kicked again. For several minutes, she sat alone in the living room, feeling those tiny movements, feeling a life growing inside her, feeling something she knew she shouldn't become attached to. That evening, Rachel rushed over after hearing the news. "Can I feel it?" Olivia nodded. Rachel placed both hands on her stomach. After several minutes, the baby kicked. Rachel burst into tears. Nathan smiled wider than Olivia had ever seen. For a moment, all 3 of them shared the same happiness. None of them noticed how complicated things were slowly becoming. None of them saw the invisible lines beginning to blur. The pregnancy continued. The baby grew. The family celebrated every milestone. And as the months passed, Olivia convinced herself that everything would work out exactly as planned. She believed the love between sisters would protect them. She believed gratitude would last forever. She believed promises would be kept. She had no idea that the greatest sacrifice she was making wasn't physical. It wasn't the nausea. It wasn't the exhaustion. It wasn't even the birth that waited ahead. The greatest sacrifice would come later, when the child she carried entered the world, and the people she trusted most began changing in ways she never expected. By the time Olivia reached her 4th month of pregnancy, The reality of what she was doing had fully settled into her daily life. Every morning began with the same awareness. The baby was there, growing, moving, changing, and although the child belonged to Rachel and Nathan, it was Olivia's body carrying him through every moment of those 9 months. The morning sickness eventually eased, but new challenges replaced it. Her back hurt more often. She became tired easily. Simple tasks took longer than before. Still, she rarely complained. Whenever she felt uncomfortable, she reminded herself why she had agreed to do this. She pictured Rachel holding her baby for the first time. She pictured the happiness that moment would bring, and somehow it helped. Rachel remained deeply involved in every stage of the pregnancy. Sometimes she called Olivia 3 or 4 times a day. "How are you feeling? Did the baby move today? What did the doctor say?" At first, Olivia found the constant attention touching. Rachel had waited years for this opportunity. Every day felt precious to her. But as the months passed, something began to feel different. Rachel wasn't simply excited. She seemed afraid of missing anything, afraid of losing control, afraid that something might happen before the baby was safely in her arms. One afternoon, Olivia and Rachel attended an ultrasound appointment together. Nathan was away on a business trip and couldn't attend. As the technician moved the device across Olivia's stomach, the baby's image appeared on the screen. Tiny fingers, tiny feet, a tiny heartbeat. Rachel immediately burst into tears. "He's beautiful," she whispered. The technician smiled. "He looks healthy." Rachel never took her eyes off the monitor. For several minutes, she simply stared, as if she were trying to memorize every detail. When the appointment ended, Rachel remained emotional the entire drive home. "I still can't believe this is happening," Olivia smiled. "It is. You have no idea what this means to me." Olivia looked at her sister. Actually, she thought she did, because she had watched Rachel suffer for years. She had witnessed every disappointment, every failed treatment, and every shattered hope. And if carrying this child could heal some of that pain, then the sacrifice felt worthwhile, at least for now. As summer approached, Olivia's stomach became impossible to hide. Strangers smiled at her in grocery stores. Neighbors congratulated her. Cashiers asked when the baby was due. Every time it happened, Olivia faced an awkward decision. Should she explain, or simply smile and move on? Most of the time, she chose the second option. The full story always felt too complicated. One evening, while attending a family barbecue, several relatives gathered around her. Everyone wanted to talk about the baby. Everyone wanted updates. Rachel remained nearby the entire time, listening, watching, and smiling. But Olivia noticed something unusual. Whenever someone congratulated her directly, Rachel seemed uncomfortable. The feeling was subtle, almost impossible to describe. Yet it was there. One relative placed a hand on Olivia's shoulder. "What you're doing is incredible." Rachel immediately interrupted. "We're just so grateful." The comment seemed harmless, but something about Rachel's tone felt different, possessive, protective, as though she wanted everyone to remember that this was her child. Olivia quickly dismissed the thought. Rachel had every right to feel protective. This was her baby, her dream, her future. Still, the feeling lingered. The months continued passing. The baby grew stronger. His kicks became more frequent and more noticeable. Sometimes Olivia would wake up in the middle of the night, feeling him move. In those quiet moments, she often rested a hand on her stomach and wondered what kind of little boy he would become. Would he inherit Rachel's kindness, Nathan's confidence? Would he love sports, books, or music? She found herself imagining a future she wasn't supposed to be part of. That realization made her uncomfortable because despite all the legal agreements and medical paperwork, emotions were never simple, especially when life was growing inside you. One afternoon, Emma, Olivia's daughter, sat beside her on the couch. She gently touched Olivia's stomach. "When the baby is born, where will he go?" Olivia smiled. "To Aunt Rachel and Uncle Nathan." Emma thought for a moment. "Will you miss him?" The question caught Olivia by surprise. For several seconds, she didn't know how to answer. Finally, she nodded. "A little." Emma frowned. "Then why are you doing it?" Olivia wrapped an arm around her daughter. "Because sometimes helping someone you love requires sacrifice." Emma seemed satisfied with the answer, but Olivia wasn't entirely sure she believed it herself anymore. Not completely. The closer the birth came, the more complicated her emotions became. Rachel, meanwhile, seemed happier than she had been in years. She painted the nursery, bought tiny clothes, read parenting books. She talked about Ethan constantly. The name had finally been chosen, Ethan Brooks. Rachel repeated it every chance she got. She loved hearing it. Nathan loved hearing it. And gradually, the entire family began referring to the baby by name. The future felt close now, real, inevitable. Then, one evening, something happened that Olivia couldn't stop thinking about. Rachel had come over for dinner. After the meal, the two sisters sat alone in the backyard, while the children played nearby. The conversation drifted toward the birth. Hospital plans, visitors, schedules, normal things. Then Rachel suddenly became serious. "After Ethan is born, I think we should establish clear boundaries." Olivia looked at her. "What do you mean?" Rachel hesitated. "Nothing bad." "Rachel, I just don't want confusion." Olivia felt a strange sensation in her chest. "What kind of confusion?" Rachel looked away. "You know, for Ethan." The words felt unexpected. Olivia stared at her sister. "I've never tried to act like his mother." "I know. Then why would there be confusion?" Rachel quickly forced a smile. "There won't be. Forget I said anything." But Olivia couldn't forget. For the rest of the evening, the conversation replayed in her mind. The concern in Rachel's voice, the nervousness, the need for boundaries. For the first time, Olivia wondered if Rachel was afraid of something or someone. The thought disappeared almost as quickly as it arrived. Rachel was stressed. Pregnancy was emotional for everyone involved. There was no reason to overthink it. At least, that's what Olivia told herself. But deep down, a small seed of doubt had been planted, a doubt that would continue growing long after Ethan entered the world, and long after the promises made between sisters began to break apart. For now, however, the dream continued. The nursery was ready. The family was excited. The doctors were pleased with the pregnancy. Everything appeared perfect. Yet sometimes the most painful storms begin when the sky still looks clear. And neither Olivia nor Rachel realized that the first cracks had already begun to appear. As Olivia entered the final months of pregnancy, life seemed to revolve entirely around Ethan's arrival. The baby had become the center of everyone's world. Rachel talked about him constantly. Nathan checked on Olivia almost every day. Their parents counted down the weeks until the birth. Even Olivia's children had become excited. Emma often helped fold tiny baby clothes, while Jack proudly told his friends that his mother was helping his aunt have a baby. For a while, everything felt hopeful, beautiful even. Rachel seemed happier than Olivia had seen her in years. The sadness that had followed her through countless failed treatments had begun to disappear. In its place was excitement, anticipation, and joy. One Saturday morning, Rachel invited Olivia to help finish the nursery. The room had already been painted a soft shade of blue. A white crib stood against one wall. A rocking chair sat beside the window. Tiny stuffed animals lined the shelves. As Olivia stepped into the room, Rachel smiled. "Can you believe this?" Olivia looked around. "It looks beautiful." Rachel's eyes filled with tears. "For years, I thought this room would stay empty forever." Olivia wrapped an arm around her shoulders. "It won't." Rachel rested her head against her sister's shoulder. For a moment, neither of them spoke. They simply stood together in the nursery, imagining the future, a future that finally seemed within reach. Over the following weeks, baby showers were planned. Gifts arrived. Family members called constantly. Everyone wanted updates. Everyone wanted to know how the baby was doing. At one gathering, relatives surrounded Olivia with questions. "How are you feeling? Is the baby kicking? When is the due date?" Olivia answered politely. But she noticed something. Rachel always stayed close, very close. Whenever conversations focused too much on Olivia, Rachel seemed uncomfortable, not angry, not rude, just uneasy, as though she wanted people to remember who the baby belonged to. Again, Olivia ignored the feeling. Rachel had waited years for this child. Of course, she wanted to feel included. Of course, she wanted people to see Ethan as hers. There was nothing wrong with that. At least, that was what Olivia told herself. Meanwhile, the pregnancy continued smoothly. The doctors were pleased. The baby was healthy. Everything appeared perfect. One evening, after a routine appointment, the doctor showed them a detailed ultrasound image. Ethan's face was visible for the first time. His tiny nose, his cheeks, his profile. Rachel immediately started crying. Nathan stared at the image in silence. Olivia felt emotional too. The little boy suddenly seemed real. Not just a pregnancy, not just a promise, a person, a child who would soon enter the world. On the drive home, Rachel couldn't stop smiling. "I already love him so much." Olivia smiled. "I know. I haven't even held him yet." "You don't need to." Rachel looked out the window. "I keep imagining his first day home, his first birthday, his first steps." Olivia listened quietly. Every dream Rachel described was beautiful, and every dream reminded Olivia why she had agreed to do this. Months earlier, she had been carrying hope. Now she was carrying someone's future. As the due date approached, life became increasingly busy. Hospital bags were packed. Birth plans were discussed. Emergency contacts were confirmed. Everyone prepared for the big day. One evening, Rachel arrived unexpectedly at Olivia's house. She seemed emotional, more emotional than usual. The two sisters sat together in the kitchen long after everyone else had gone to bed. Rachel stared at Olivia's stomach before quietly saying something that surprised her. "Sometimes I'm jealous." Olivia frowned. "Jealous?" Rachel nodded. "You get to feel everything." Olivia remained silent. "The kicks, the movement, the connection." Rachel lowered her eyes. "I know he's my son, but sometimes I wish I could experience what you're experiencing." For the first time, Olivia truly understood the depth of Rachel's grief. Even now, with Ethan almost here, there were parts of motherhood Rachel would never experience. The first heartbeat inside her own body, the first kick, the physical bond of pregnancy. Some losses remained, even after miracles happened. Olivia reached for her sister's hand. "He's going to love you." Rachel smiled through tears. "I hope so." The conversation stayed with Olivia for days, because beneath Rachel's happiness, there was still pain. And perhaps beneath that pain, there was something else. Fear. A fear that Olivia couldn't quite identify. The closer they came to the birth, the stronger that fear seemed to become. Rachel wanted to know everything. Every appointment, every symptom, every movement. Sometimes she called multiple times a day. Sometimes she arrived without warning, just to check on Olivia. Nathan noticed it too. One afternoon, he apologized. "She's nervous." Olivia smiled. "I understand. She's terrified something will go wrong." Olivia nodded. Truthfully, she felt nervous herself. After everything they had been through, the stakes felt enormous. Nobody wanted complications. Nobody wanted disappointment. They had all come too far. Then, just 3 weeks before Ethan's due date, a small scare reminded everyone how fragile things could be. Olivia experienced sudden pain late one evening. Nothing severe, but enough to send her to the hospital. Rachel and Nathan arrived within minutes. The doctors examined her. Monitors were connected. Tests were performed. For several tense hours, nobody knew what was happening. Rachel cried in the waiting room. Nathan paced the hallway. Olivia remained calm for everyone's sake. Eventually, the doctors delivered good news. The baby was fine. Everything was stable. It had simply been a false alarm. The relief was overwhelming. Rachel hugged Olivia so tightly she could barely breathe. "I was so scared," Olivia smiled. "So was I." But as they left the hospital that night, Olivia noticed something. Rachel didn't seem relieved because Olivia was okay. She seemed relieved because Ethan was okay. The realization wasn't cruel. It wasn't even surprising. Yet it lingered, because for the first time, Olivia felt like she was becoming invisible inside her own pregnancy. The focus was no longer on her. It was entirely on the baby, on Ethan. And as the due date drew closer, that feeling only grew stronger. Still, Olivia pushed the thought aside. The baby would be born soon. The difficult part would finally be over. Rachel would have the child she had dreamed about for years. Everyone would be happy. Everything would return to normal. That was what Olivia believed. She didn't know that normal would never return, and that the day Ethan entered the world would mark the beginning of a very different story. The day Ethan was born began before sunrise. Olivia woke up just after 4 o'clock in the morning with a strange feeling she couldn't explain. At first, she tried to ignore it. She shifted in bed, closed her eyes, and tried to go back to sleep. Then, another contraction came, stronger this time. She immediately sat up. Benjamin woke beside her. "What is it?" Olivia looked at him. "I think it's time." Within minutes, the entire house was awake. Benjamin grabbed the hospital bags they had packed weeks earlier. Olivia called Rachel. The phone rang once before Rachel answered. "Olivia," her voice sounded terrified. "It's happening." For a moment, Rachel said nothing. Then, Olivia heard her start crying. "We're coming." The drive to the hospital felt surreal. After months of waiting, planning, appointments, and anticipation, the moment had finally arrived. Ethan was coming. By the time Olivia was admitted, Rachel and Nathan had already arrived. Rachel looked pale from nervousness. Nathan was trying to stay calm, but his hands shook every time he checked his phone. Hours passed. The contractions grew stronger. The pain intensified. Doctors and nurses moved in and out of the room. Benjamin stayed by Olivia's side the entire time. Rachel rarely left. Sometimes she sat quietly in a corner. Sometimes she paced. Sometimes she cried. Nobody seemed capable of sitting still. The atmosphere was filled with anticipation, hope, fear, and excitement all at once. As the afternoon approached, the doctors announced that the birth was getting close. Rachel immediately grabbed Nathan's hand. Olivia looked at her sister. For a brief moment, their eyes met. Neither woman spoke. They didn't need to. The emotion between them was overwhelming. Years of heartbreak, Years of disappointment, years of dreaming, everything had led to this day. Several hours later, Ethan entered the world. The sound of his first cry filled the room, and suddenly, everyone began crying too. Rachel covered her mouth with both hands. Nathan stared in disbelief. Benjamin wiped tears from his eyes. Even one of the nurses became emotional. For a few seconds, time seemed to stop. Ethan was healthy, perfect, beautiful. The doctor carefully examined him before placing him into Rachel's waiting arms. The moment Rachel held her son for the first time, she completely broke down. Tears streamed down her face. She kissed his forehead repeatedly. "My baby." The words came out as little more than a whisper. "My baby." Nathan wrapped an arm around her. His own eyes were filled with tears. For years, they had feared this moment would never happen. Now, Ethan was finally here. Olivia watched quietly from her hospital bed, exhausted, emotional, relieved. She felt happiness for her sister, genuine happiness. Watching Rachel hold Ethan made every sacrifice feel worthwhile. The morning sickness, the discomfort, the sleepless nights, the months of carrying someone else's dream. All of it suddenly seemed worth it. A little later, after Rachel and Nathan had spent time with Ethan, Rachel walked over to Olivia's bed. Her eyes were still red from crying. She carefully placed Ethan into Olivia's arms. For a moment, Olivia froze. She had spent 9 months carrying him. Now she was holding him for the first time. He was tiny, warm, perfect. His small fingers wrapped around hers. And despite everything she had prepared herself for, emotion surged through her. Not because she believed he was her child, but because she knew she would never forget this moment. Never. Rachel sat beside her. "I don't know how to thank you." Olivia smiled through tears. "You already have." Rachel shook her head. "No." Her voice trembled. "I could spend the rest of my life thanking you, and it still wouldn't be enough." Nathan nodded. "She's right." Rachel reached for Olivia's hand. "You'll always be part of Ethan's life." Olivia looked at her. Rachel continued. "Always." Nathan agreed immediately. "We would never keep him from you." The promise sounded sincere, completely sincere. And in that hospital room, surrounded by love and emotion, Olivia believed every word. Later that evening, family members arrived. Grandparents, aunts, uncles. Everyone wanted to meet Ethan. Everyone wanted photographs. The hospital room filled with laughter and celebration. For the first time in years, Rachel looked completely happy. The sadness that had haunted her seemed gone, replaced by joy. As night fell, visitors slowly left, and the room became quiet again. Olivia lay in bed, recovering, while Rachel sat nearby holding Ethan. Neither woman spoke for a long time. Eventually, Rachel looked up. "He's everything I dreamed about." Olivia smiled. "I know." Rachel lowered her eyes to her son. "I'll never forget what you did for us." Those words sounded honest, heartfelt, permanent. But life has a strange way of changing people, especially when fear becomes involved. At that moment, nobody could imagine what would happen in the years ahead. Nobody could imagine the lies, the distance, the accusations, or the message that would eventually tear the family apart. Because in that hospital room, they were still sisters, still best friends, still united by love. The betrayal had not begun yet. But looking back years later, Olivia would realize something. The day Ethan was born wasn't only the day Rachel became a mother. It was also the day Rachel began fearing something she could never fully control. The bond between the woman who gave birth to Ethan and the child she had carried beneath her heart for 9 months. A fear that would slowly grow over the years. A fear that would eventually change everything. For the first year after Ethan's birth, everything seemed exactly as Olivia had hoped. Rachel and Nathan were overjoyed. Their home revolved entirely around their son. Photographs filled every room. Videos filled their phones. Conversations filled with stories about Ethan's latest milestone. His first smile, his first laugh, his first tooth, his first word. Every achievement felt like a celebration, and Olivia was included in all of it. Almost every day, Rachel sent photographs, sometimes several. Ethan sleeping, Ethan playing, Ethan laughing in his high chair. Rachel often added little messages beneath the pictures. Look at his smile today. He finally slept through the night. He keeps trying to say your name. Each message warmed Olivia's heart. Not because she wanted credit, not because she felt like Ethan's mother, but because she loved him. He was her nephew, and after carrying him for 9 months, loving him felt natural. Benjamin noticed how happy the arrangement seemed. One evening, while Olivia was looking through pictures Rachel had sent, he smiled. It worked out. Olivia nodded. It really did. Rachel had kept her promise. Nathan had kept his. Everything felt normal, healthy, exactly as everyone had hoped. Family gatherings became even more joyful after Ethan's arrival. Grandparents adored him. Cousins fought over who got to hold him. Relatives constantly commented on how lucky Rachel and Nathan were. At birthday parties and holidays, Ethan often moved from one pair of arms to another. He was the center of attention everywhere he went, and Rachel seemed genuinely grateful. Whenever someone praised Ethan, she often reminded them what Olivia had done. I couldn't have him without her. Those words always embarrassed Olivia, but they also reassured her. The sacrifice had meant something. The appreciation seemed genuine. For a while, life felt peaceful. Then Ethan turned 2, and subtle changes began. At first, Olivia barely noticed them. Rachel became slightly slower at replying to messages. Photographs arrived less often. Phone calls became shorter. Nothing dramatic. Nothing that immediately raised concern. Olivia assumed parenthood was simply becoming more demanding. After all, toddlers required constant attention. Life was busy. Everyone understood that. Still, the changes continued. One afternoon, Olivia sent Rachel a message asking if she could stop by with a birthday gift for Ethan. Several hours passed before Rachel replied, "Today isn't a good day." The response seemed unusual, but Olivia didn't think much about it. A few days later, she tried again. Another excuse, then another. The pattern slowly became difficult to ignore. Meanwhile, family gatherings began feeling different. Rachel seemed more protective than before. Whenever Ethan naturally wandered toward Olivia, Rachel often called him back. Whenever relatives mentioned the pregnancy, Rachel quickly changed the subject. Again, the behavior wasn't openly hostile, just uncomfortable, as though certain topics suddenly made her nervous. One evening, Olivia mentioned it to Benjamin. "I think Rachel is acting differently." Benjamin looked up from his book. "Differently? How?" "I don't know." She hesitated. More distant. Benjamin thought for a moment. Maybe she's stressed. Maybe. But something inside Olivia wasn't convinced. The feeling continued growing. Then one day, something happened that neither Olivia nor Rachel expected. During a family barbecue, Ethan was playing in the backyard with several cousins. He was almost 3 years old now. Curious, energetic, always asking questions. At one point, he wandered over to Olivia and climbed onto her lap. Everyone smiled. The little boy clearly adored her. Then, Ethan asked a question that caused the entire table to fall silent. "Aunt Olivia, is it true I lived in your tummy?" The backyard became completely quiet. Forks stopped moving. Conversation stopped. Even the children, seemed to sense something unusual. Olivia looked at Rachel. Rachel looked frozen. For a moment, nobody spoke. Then Nathan forced a laugh. "Where did you hear that?" Ethan pointed toward one of the older cousins. "He told me." Rachel immediately stood. "Okay, sweetheart. Let's go get some ice cream." She sounded cheerful. Too cheerful. The kind of cheerful people use when they're uncomfortable. Ethan happily followed her. But the atmosphere never fully recovered. The question lingered in everyone's minds, especially Rachel's. Later that evening, after most relatives had left, Rachel pulled Olivia aside. She seemed upset, more upset than Olivia expected. "I don't want people talking about the surrogacy in front of Ethan." Olivia nodded. "Okay. He doesn't need to know right now." "Of course." Rachel crossed her arms. "I just want him to have a normal childhood." Olivia frowned slightly. "He can." Rachel remained silent. Then she quietly added something that stayed with Olivia long after the conversation ended. "Sometimes I wish people would forget how he came into the world." The words surprised her, because forgetting wasn't possible. Not entirely. Not after everything that had happened. Not after all the sacrifices made. Still, Olivia didn't argue. She understood Rachel's fear. At least she thought she did. What she didn't understand was how deeply that fear was beginning to affect Rachel. Because over the following months, Rachel's behavior became increasingly strange. She avoided conversations about the pregnancy. She became defensive whenever anyone mentioned surrogacy. And whenever Ethan showed affection toward Olivia, Rachel seemed uncomfortable. The changes were subtle, small enough to dismiss individually. But together, they formed a pattern Olivia could no longer ignore. For the first time since Ethan's birth, she began wondering whether Rachel still viewed her as a sister, or whether she had started seeing her as something else, something dangerous, something threatening. The thought felt ridiculous, yet somehow it refused to leave her mind. And although Olivia didn't realize it yet, the distance that would eventually destroy their family had already begun. Quietly, slowly, one uncomfortable moment at a time. At first, Olivia told herself she was imagining things. Rachel was a mother now. Life was different, busy, complicated, and exhausting. It was normal for priorities to change. It was normal for relationships to evolve. At least, that was what Olivia kept telling herself. But as Ethan approached his 4th birthday, the distance between them became impossible to ignore. The changes were small at first. A missed phone call, an unanswered text message, a canceled visit. Each incident seemed harmless on its own, yet together they formed a pattern that made Olivia uneasy. One Saturday morning, Olivia stopped by Rachel's house with a small gift she had bought for Ethan. Nothing expensive, just a dinosaur book she knew he would love. When she rang the doorbell, she heard movement inside. A television, footsteps, voices. Someone was clearly home, but nobody answered. After several minutes, Olivia returned to her car. As she drove away, she noticed something strange. Nathan's car was parked in the driveway. Rachel's car was there too. They had been home. They simply hadn't opened the door. The realization stayed with her all afternoon. Later that evening, she sent Rachel a message. "Everything okay today?" Several hours passed before Rachel replied. "Sorry, we were sleeping." Olivia stared at the screen. Sleeping? At 2 o'clock in the afternoon? The explanation didn't make sense, but she said nothing. Over the following weeks, similar situations continued happening. Every attempt to visit Ethan seemed to be met with excuses. "We already have plans. Ethan isn't feeling well. Maybe another time. We've been busy." The reasons changed, The result never did. Eventually, Olivia stopped asking as often, not because she wanted to, but because she was tired of feeling unwanted. One evening, while helping Emma with homework, Olivia received a notification on social media. Rachel had posted photographs from a family outing. Ethan was smiling beside Nathan. They had visited the zoo. Several relatives had joined them. Olivia hadn't been invited. The sight hurt more than she expected, not because she believed she had a right to be there, but because nobody had even told her it was happening. For the first time, she felt excluded. Later that night, Benjamin noticed her mood. "What happened?" Olivia showed him the photographs. Benjamin studied them quietly, before sighing. "Have you asked Rachel about it?" "No." "Why not?" Olivia shrugged. "I don't want to sound needy." Benjamin looked at her carefully. "You're not asking for attention." "It feels like I am." "No." He shook his head. "You're asking why your sister is slowly disappearing from your life." The words stung because they were true. A few days later, Olivia finally called Rachel. This time, Rachel answered. "Hey." Her voice sounded distracted. "Hi." For a moment, neither woman spoke. Then Olivia took a deep breath. "Have I done something wrong?" The silence that followed felt endless. "What do you mean? You seem distant." Rachel laughed nervously. "I'm not distant." "Rachel, I've just been busy." Olivia had expected that answer. It sounded rehearsed, automatic, not entirely honest. "We all get busy." Rachel didn't respond. "Did something happen?" "No." "Are you sure?" "Yes." The conversation ended shortly afterward. Nothing was resolved. Nothing was explained. And somehow, Olivia felt worse afterward than before, because now she knew Rachel wasn't going to tell her the truth. Whatever was happening, Rachel had no intention of discussing it. Months passed. Ethan turned 4, then 4.5. The little boy Olivia once saw every week was becoming someone she barely knew. That realization broke her heart. Not because she wanted to be his mother. She never had. She never would. But she loved him. And loving someone while being slowly pushed away from them was painful. Then came the moment that changed everything. It happened during a family birthday party. The entire family had gathered at their parents' house. Children were running through the backyard. Adults were talking around picnic tables. For the first time in months, Olivia had a chance to spend time with Ethan. The little boy immediately ran toward her. "Aunt Olivia!" He wrapped his arms around her waist. Olivia smiled. "Hey, buddy." Ethan looked up at her. "Mom says you were very important before I was born." Several relatives glanced toward Rachel. Rachel immediately stiffened. Olivia noticed. So did everyone else. "What does that mean?" Ethan asked. The question seemed innocent, simple, and normal, but Rachel's reaction wasn't. She walked over immediately. "Ethan, come help me inside." The little boy looked confused. "But now." Her tone was unusually sharp. Ethan lowered his head and followed her. An uncomfortable silence settled over the gathering. Nobody knew what to say. Nobody wanted to make things worse. Later that evening, Olivia found Rachel alone in the kitchen. "What was that about?" Rachel avoided eye contact. "Nothing." "It didn't seem like nothing." Rachel crossed her arms. "I don't want Ethan asking questions." "He's a child. Children ask questions." Rachel's voice became tense. "You don't understand." "Then help me understand." For a moment, Rachel looked as though she might finally explain everything. Instead, she simply said, "I need you to trust me." The answer frustrated Olivia because trust required honesty, and honesty was becoming increasingly difficult to find. As Olivia drove home that night, she couldn't stop thinking about Rachel's behavior. The fear, the defensiveness, the constant need to control every conversation involving Ethan. Something wasn't right. Something had changed. And whatever it was, it had nothing to do with Olivia's actions. For the first time, she began wondering whether Rachel's growing distance wasn't caused by resentment, anger, or misunderstanding. Maybe it was fear, a deep fear Rachel refused to admit, a fear that was slowly consuming her. And, if Olivia was right, that fear would soon push Rachel to make a decision that would change their family forever. By the time Ethan was 5 years old, Olivia could no longer pretend that everything was normal. The distance between her and Rachel had become impossible to ignore. What had once been a close relationship now felt strained, uncomfortable, and fragile. Weeks sometimes passed without a single phone call. Messages often went unanswered. Visits became rare, and every time Olivia tried to reconnect, she felt as though she was pushing against an invisible wall. The hardest part was not knowing why. Rachel never explained anything. She never accused Olivia of doing something wrong. She never started an argument. Instead, she simply kept pulling away, little by little, one closed door at a time. One Saturday morning, Olivia decided she was done waiting. She picked up a gift she had bought for Ethan and drove to Rachel's house. She hadn't seen him in nearly 2 months. 2 months. The realization alone made her heart ache. As she drove, she remembered the little boy who used to run into her arms at family gatherings. The little boy who once called her his favorite aunt. The little boy she had carried beneath her heart for 9 months. She wasn't expecting a long visit. Just an hour, maybe less. Enough to see Ethan smile. Enough to remind herself that he was still part of her life. When she arrived, Rachel opened the door. Immediately, Olivia sensed something was wrong. Rachel looked nervous, almost alarmed. "Olivia." "Hi." Rachel stepped outside and quietly pulled the door closed behind her. The gesture felt strange, protective, almost defensive. "I brought Ethan a gift." Rachel glanced toward the house. "That was nice of you." Olivia waited. Rachel didn't invite her inside. Instead, she remained standing on the porch. The silence became awkward. Finally, Olivia spoke. "Can I see him?" Rachel hesitated. Then she shook her head. "Today isn't a good day." Olivia frowned. "Why not?" Rachel looked uncomfortable. "We have plans." Olivia glanced past her sister toward the living room window. The television was on. She could hear laughter, children's voices. Someone was clearly inside. Rachel noticed where she was looking. Her expression tightened immediately. "We're busy." The words felt cold, much colder than Rachel probably intended. Olivia stood there for a moment, trying to understand, trying to find a reasonable explanation. Then she handed over the gift. "Okay." Rachel accepted it. "Thank you." The conversation ended there. No invitation, no hug, no explanation, just a closed door. As Olivia returned to her car, she felt a sadness she couldn't explain. Not anger, not resentment, just sadness. The kind that settles quietly in a person's chest. The kind that grows when someone you love slowly disappears from your life. That evening, Benjamin found her sitting alone on the back porch. She stared out at the yard while the sun slowly disappeared behind the trees. "You saw them today." Olivia nodded. "How did it go?" She laughed softly. Not because anything was funny, because the truth hurt. "I didn't get past the front door." Benjamin sat beside her. Neither spoke for several moments. Then he asked the question she had been avoiding. "What do you think is really happening?" Olivia looked down. "I don't know." But deep down, she wasn't entirely honest, because part of her did know, or at least suspected. Rachel wasn't busy. Rachel wasn't distracted. Rachel wasn't overwhelmed. Rachel was avoiding her. The question was why. A few weeks later, the family gathered for Thanksgiving. Olivia almost didn't attend, but their mother insisted. Please come. So she did. At first, everything seemed normal. The children played together. The adults prepared food. The house filled with familiar sounds. Laughter. Conversations. The clinking of dishes. For a brief moment, Olivia felt hopeful. Maybe things would improve. Maybe she had overthought everything. Then Ethan entered the kitchen. The little boy spotted her immediately. "Aunt Olivia!" He ran toward her. Without hesitation, Olivia opened her arms. Ethan hugged her tightly. For a moment, she felt genuine happiness, the kind she hadn't felt in months. Then she noticed Rachel, watching from across the room. Her smile looked forced, tight, uncomfortable. Throughout the afternoon, Rachel barely left Ethan's side. If he wandered toward Olivia, Rachel called him back. If Olivia started a conversation with him, Rachel interrupted. The behavior became so obvious that even other relatives noticed. One aunt exchanged a confused glance with Olivia. Another quietly changed the subject whenever tension appeared. Nobody said anything directly, but everyone felt it. The atmosphere had changed. Something was wrong, and everyone knew it. On the drive home, Olivia sat quietly in the passenger seat. Benjamin glanced at her. "You're thinking?" "Yeah." "What about?" Olivia stared out the window. "I think Rachel is afraid." Benjamin frowned. "Of what?" She didn't answer immediately, because the truth sounded ridiculous, at least at first. Finally, she said it. "I think she's afraid of me." Benjamin looked surprised. "Why would she be afraid of you?" Olivia shook her head. "I don't know." But once the idea entered her mind, she couldn't stop thinking about it. Fear explained everything. The distance, the avoidance, the discomfort, the closed doors, the constant need to control every interaction involving Ethan. Rachel wasn't acting angry. She was acting threatened. The realization unsettled Olivia because she had never wanted anything from Rachel. Not money, not gratitude, not recognition, and certainly not Ethan. She had honored every agreement, every promise, every boundary. Yet somehow, Rachel behaved as though Olivia represented a danger. The weeks continued passing. The distance continued growing. Then one evening, Olivia discovered something that broke her heart. She was scrolling through social media when she saw photographs from Ethan's birthday party. There were balloons, presents, family members, friends, a giant birthday cake. Nearly everyone had attended. Everyone except her. No invitation had ever arrived. No phone call. No explanation. Nothing. Olivia stared at the photographs for a long time. Picture after picture. Smiling faces. Celebration. Memories being created. And she wasn't there. For the first time, tears filled her eyes. Not because she believed she deserved special treatment, but because she realized something painful. Rachel hadn't simply become distant. She was actively removing Olivia from Ethan's life. Slowly, carefully, deliberately. The realization felt impossible, yet the evidence was impossible to ignore. That night, Olivia barely slept. Questions raced through her mind. What had she done wrong? Why was Rachel acting this way? Why couldn't her sister simply tell her the truth? As she lay awake staring into the darkness, she had no idea that the answers were coming. And when they arrived, they would be far more painful than anything she had imagined. Because the next chapter of their story wouldn't begin with another closed door. It would begin with a message that would shatter everything. Olivia never expected a text message to change her life. Yet that was exactly what happened. For days after seeing the photographs from Ethan's birthday party, she tried to convince herself There was a reasonable explanation. Maybe Rachel had forgotten. Maybe there had been a misunderstanding. Maybe someone else had handled the invitations. The excuses sounded weak, even inside her own head. Deep down, she knew the truth. Rachel hadn't forgotten. She had chosen not to invite her. The realization hurt more than Olivia wanted to admit. For years, she had protected her sister, supported her, and sacrificed for her, and now she felt like a stranger. Still, Olivia refused to create conflict. She decided to give Rachel space. Maybe that was what she needed. Maybe time would fix whatever had gone wrong between them. For several weeks, Olivia said nothing. She didn't call. She didn't visit. She didn't ask questions. She simply waited. Then, one Tuesday afternoon, her phone buzzed. Rachel's name appeared on the screen. For the first time in months, Olivia felt hopeful. Maybe Rachel was finally ready to talk. Maybe she missed her too. Maybe everything could still be repaired. Olivia opened the message. The hope disappeared instantly. The words were short, cold, and carefully written, almost as if they had been discussed beforehand. After talking about it together, Nathan and I believe it's best if you stop visiting Ethan. We need to establish healthier boundaries. Moving forward, please don't come by unless we specifically invite you. Olivia stared at the screen, then read it again and again. Her hands began shaking. The message didn't feel real. It felt like something written by strangers. Not by Rachel. Not by the little sister she had loved her entire life. For several minutes, Olivia simply sat there, unable to move, unable to think, unable to breathe normally. Eventually, she typed a reply. "What are you talking about?" The message showed as delivered. No response came. A few minutes later, she called. The call went straight to voicemail. She tried again. The same result. Then she called Nathan. His phone rang once before disconnecting. A second later, another message appeared. This one from Rachel. "Please respect our decision." Nothing else. No explanation. No conversation. No opportunity to understand. Just a decision. A decision that affected her life without giving her a voice. Olivia felt physically sick. For the rest of the afternoon, she wandered through the house in a daze. Benjamin found her sitting at the kitchen table hours later. She handed him the phone without speaking. He read the messages slowly. His expression darkened. "What is this?" "I don't know." "Did something happen?" "No. There has to be a reason." "I wish I knew." Benjamin reread the message and shook his head. "This doesn't make sense." That night, neither of them slept much. Questions filled the silence. Why now? Why so suddenly? Why, after all these years? Nothing about Rachel's decision felt logical, and yet it was happening. The next morning, Olivia woke up hoping the entire situation had been some terrible misunderstanding. Maybe Rachel would call. Maybe she would apologize. Maybe everything would make sense. But the phone remained silent. Days passed. Then weeks. Nothing changed. Rachel ignored every attempt at communication. Nathan did the same. Even family gatherings became awkward. Some relatives seemed aware that something had happened. Others clearly knew more than they admitted. Conversations stopped when Olivia entered a room. People exchanged uncomfortable glances. Whispers ended abruptly. The atmosphere felt strange and unnatural, as though a story was being told behind her back. A story she wasn't allowed to hear. One Sunday afternoon, Olivia attended a family barbecue at her parents' house. Rachel and Nathan didn't come. Neither did Ethan. The absence was impossible to ignore. Several relatives tried avoiding the subject. Others seemed curious. Eventually, one aunt spoke carefully. "Have you talked to Rachel recently?" Olivia shook her head. "No." The woman looked uncomfortable. Then she changed the subject. The reaction only increased Olivia's suspicion. Something was happening. People knew something, but nobody wanted to tell her. After the barbecue ended, Olivia's mother stopped her before she left. "Can we talk?" Immediately, Olivia knew something was wrong. Her mother led her into the kitchen, closed the door, and sighed heavily. "What is it?" Olivia asked. Her mother hesitated long enough to make her nervous. Finally, she spoke. "Rachel says she needs space." Olivia laughed bitterly. "I noticed." "No." Her mother looked troubled. "It's more than that." Olivia's stomach tightened. "What do you mean?" Again, her mother hesitated. "I don't know exactly what's being said, Mom, but I've heard things." The room suddenly felt smaller. "What things?" Her mother looked away. "Some people think Rachel believes you've become too attached to Ethan." The words hit Olivia like a physical blow. For several seconds, she couldn't speak. Then she whispered, "What?" Her mother immediately shook her head. "I don't believe it." "But she's saying that?" "I don't know exactly what she's saying." Olivia felt anger rising for the first time. Not because Rachel wanted distance, because Rachel was creating a story that wasn't true. She had never tried to act like Ethan's mother. Never. She had respected every boundary, every agreement, and every promise. Yet somehow she was being portrayed as the problem, the threat, the danger, the villain. That realization hurt more than the rejection itself, because it transformed years of sacrifice into something ugly, something suspicious, something shameful. When Olivia got home, she sat alone in the living room long after everyone else had gone to bed. The message still haunted her. "Please don't come by unless we specifically invite you." She replayed the words over and over. The more she thought about them, the less they made sense. Rachel wasn't simply creating distance. She was trying to erase something, or someone. The question was why. And for the first time, Olivia stopped asking herself what she had done wrong. Instead, she began asking a much more important question. What was Rachel so afraid of? Because fear was the only explanation left. Fear could explain the lies. Fear could explain the distance. Fear could explain the closed doors. And if Rachel was acting out of fear, then there was something much bigger hidden beneath the surface. Something neither Rachel nor Nathan wanted anyone to discover. Olivia didn't know it yet, but the answers she was searching for were already beginning to emerge. And when the truth finally surfaced, it would divide the family in ways nobody could have imagined. The weeks following Rachel's message were some of the most painful Olivia had ever experienced. Not because of what Rachel had said, but because of what happened afterward. The family began dividing into sides, quietly at first, then more openly. Some relatives believed Olivia, others believed Rachel. Many avoided taking sides entirely, and the people caught in the middle felt increasingly uncomfortable. Family gatherings changed. Birthdays changed. Holidays changed. The warmth that had once brought everyone together slowly disappeared. Every event now carried tension. Every conversation felt carefully controlled. Everyone seemed afraid of saying the wrong thing. Olivia hated it. She had never wanted conflict. She certainly never wanted to become the center of one. Yet somehow, that was exactly what had happened. One Sunday afternoon, Olivia received a call from her cousin Melissa. The two had always been close. Melissa was the kind of person who spoke honestly, even when the truth was uncomfortable. "Can you talk?" Melissa asked. Immediately, Olivia sensed something serious. "Of course." Melissa hesitated before sighing. "I think you deserve to know what's happening." Olivia's stomach tightened. "What do you mean?" I had lunch with Rachel last week. The room suddenly felt silent. And Melissa paused. She spent almost the entire time talking about you. Olivia felt her chest tighten. What did she say? Melissa sounded reluctant. Asking me to repeat this feels awful. Please. Another pause. Then Melissa finally spoke. Rachel thinks you're too attached to Ethan. Olivia closed her eyes. There it was again. The same accusation. The same story. The same lie. I've barely seen him in months. I know. I haven't even been allowed near him. I know. Olivia laughed bitterly. Nothing about it made sense. How could she be too attached to a child she wasn't even allowed to visit? Melissa continued carefully. Rachel says you struggle with boundaries. Olivia stared at the wall. For a moment, she couldn't speak because the accusation wasn't just false. It completely erased everything she had done. Every sacrifice. Every promise she had kept. Every boundary she had respected. Rachel had transformed her generosity into something suspicious, unhealthy, and dangerous. The realization hurt more than Olivia expected. Did you believe her? Olivia finally asked. Melissa answered immediately. No. The response came so quickly that tears filled Olivia's eyes. No. No. Melissa's voice became firm. I remember everything. What do you mean? I remember the pregnancy. The words softened something inside Olivia. Melissa continued. I remember how careful you were. I remember how often you reminded people Ethan was Rachel's child. I remember how much you protected Rachel's feelings. Olivia looked down. You were there. Exactly. Melissa sighed. Which is why none of this makes sense. That was the problem. Nothing made sense. The story Rachel was telling didn't match reality. Not even a little. A few days later, Olivia attended another family gathering. This time, she almost stayed home, but her parents begged her to come, and she didn't want them caught in the middle. When she arrived, the atmosphere felt uncomfortable almost immediately. Several relatives greeted her warmly. Others avoided eye contact. Some seemed nervous, as though they were afraid she might ask questions. She didn't. She was too exhausted. During dinner, conversation moved from topic to topic. Work, school, vacations, politics, everything except the obvious issue sitting in the room. Then one uncle accidentally mentioned Ethan. The table immediately became quiet. Everyone noticed. Everyone reacted. The silence lasted only a few seconds, but it felt much longer. Olivia suddenly realized something. People weren't avoiding the topic because they didn't know what was happening. They were avoiding it because they did, and that realization disturbed her. After dinner, her father joined her outside on the back porch. The evening air was cool. The yard was quiet. For several minutes, neither spoke. Then he finally said, "This is breaking your mother's heart." Olivia looked down. I know. She hates seeing her daughters like this. So do I. Her father sighed heavily. Have you considered talking to Rachel face to face? Olivia laughed sadly. How? What do you mean? She won't answer my calls. She won't answer my messages. She won't open the door. Her father didn't respond because there was nothing to say. Everything Olivia said was true. Rachel wasn't trying to solve the conflict. She was avoiding it, avoiding Olivia completely. And the more she avoided her, the more suspicious everything became. That night, after returning home, Olivia sat awake long after midnight. Benjamin eventually joined her. You should be sleeping. I know. He sat beside her. What are you thinking about? Olivia stared into the darkness. For years, I thought this was about Ethan. Benjamin listened quietly. But now, I don't think it is. What do you think it's about? Olivia hesitated because the answer sounded strange. Yet it felt increasingly true. I think Rachel is hiding something. Benjamin frowned. What kind of something? I don't know. And that was the truth. She didn't know. Not yet. But her instincts told her there was more to this story. Much more. Normal people didn't destroy lifelong relationships without explanation. Normal people didn't rewrite history. Normal people didn't isolate family members for no reason. Something had happened. Something Rachel and Nathan weren't talking about. And whatever it was, it had changed everything. A few days later, another piece of the puzzle appeared. Small, almost insignificant, but enough to make Olivia's suspicion grow. While visiting her parents, she overheard a conversation between two relatives. They didn't realize she was nearby. One of them lowered their voice and said, "Do you think Ethan knows?" The other immediately replied, "No, Rachel would never tell him." The conversation ended the moment they noticed Olivia. But the damage was done. Olivia's heart began racing. Knows what? What was Ethan supposed to know? And why were people speaking in whispers? For the first time, Olivia felt something stronger than sadness, stronger than confusion, determination, because whatever secret Rachel and Nathan were protecting, it was becoming impossible to hide. The cracks were spreading, the whispers were growing, and sooner or later, the truth would emerge, whether they wanted it to or not. The more Olivia thought about the whispers she overheard, the more unsettled she became. People stopped talking when she entered rooms, and relatives exchanged strange looks whenever Ethan's name came up. Then, one afternoon, Melissa called with troubling news. Rachel had been telling people that Olivia wanted to keep Ethan. The accusation shocked her. It wasn't just untrue. It completely erased everything she had done. Olivia had never questioned the agreement, never acted like Ethan's mother, and never crossed any boundaries. Yet Rachel was creating a story where Olivia was the problem. And some family members were beginning to believe it. That evening, Olivia sat looking through old photographs from the pregnancy and Ethan's birth. In every picture, Rachel looked grateful and happy. Nathan thanked her. The family celebrated together. Looking at those memories made the present situation feel impossible to understand. Benjamin sat beside her and quietly listened. When Olivia said Rachel was changing the story, he replied, "People usually lie when they're protecting something." The words stayed with her. At a family birthday party a few days later, Olivia noticed relatives watching her differently. She even overheard two family members discussing Rachel's claims that she had become too attached to Ethan. For the first time, Olivia realized how far the rumors had spread. The woman who had sacrificed 9 months of her life was now being portrayed as the villain. That night, she cried, not because she missed Rachel, but because she felt deeply betrayed. Soon afterward, Aunt Linda visited and revealed something else. Ethan had been asking questions. Why didn't Aunt Olivia come to birthdays anymore? Why didn't they see her? Why had she disappeared? Then, Linda quietly added, "He misses you." Those words broke Olivia's heart, because she missed him too. She had respected Rachel's wishes, stayed away, and remained silent. Yet it still wasn't enough. The more Olivia thought about it, the clearer everything became. If Rachel truly believed Olivia was a threat, she wouldn't need rumors and lies. The truth would be enough. Instead, Rachel seemed desperate to control the story. One evening, Olivia reread old messages from the pregnancy. One message from Rachel stood out. "I will spend the rest of my life making sure Ethan knows what you did for us." Looking at those words now felt painful because the opposite had happened. Rachel wasn't honoring Olivia's role. She was erasing it. For the first time, Olivia accepted the truth. The distance was intentional. The lies were intentional. The exclusion was intentional. And Rachel wasn't acting alone. Nathan had supported every decision, every excuse, and every closed door. Whatever secret they were protecting belonged to both of them. Somewhere beneath all the lies was a truth they desperately wanted hidden. But secrets rarely stay buried forever, especially when too many people already know pieces of the story. Sooner or later, someone was going to talk. After months of confusion, rumors, and unanswered questions, Olivia realized she could no longer stay silent. She had respected Rachel's wishes, accepted the distance, and stayed away from Ethan for nearly a year. But nothing improved. The lies continued, the family remained divided, and the pain only grew stronger. One evening, she told Benjamin the truth. "I need answers." For the first time, she decided to stop waiting and start looking for them. Over the following weeks, Olivia spoke with relatives, hoping someone could explain what was happening. Most people offered the same vague answers. Rachel needed space. It was complicated. Nobody seemed willing to say more. Then, Melissa called with something different. She had overheard Nathan arguing with someone months earlier. According to Melissa, Nathan kept repeating the same sentence. "If Ethan ever finds out, everything will fall apart." The words stayed with Olivia. Finds out what? More importantly, why was Nathan so afraid? A few days later, Olivia's mother brought over a box of old family photographs. As Olivia looked through them, she found pictures from Ethan's birth and first year. In every photo, Rachel, Nathan, and Olivia looked happy, grateful, united. There were no signs of the future conflict. Yet as she stared at the images, a new thought entered her mind. What if the secret wasn't about her at all? For years, Olivia believed Rachel and Nathan were trying to protect Ethan from her. But now she wondered if they were trying to protect themselves from Ethan. Everything seemed connected to one fear. Ethan discovering the truth, the whispers, the lies, the distance, and the years of secrecy all pointed in the same direction. That realization changed everything. Maybe Olivia had never been the problem. Maybe she was simply a reminder of a truth Rachel and Nathan desperately wanted to keep hidden. As she placed the photographs back into the box, she felt closer than ever to the answer. The pieces were beginning to fit together. Somewhere behind all the fear was a secret, and sooner or later, that secret would come to light. As Olivia searched for answers, more clues began pointing toward Nathan. One evening, Melissa called with something strange. She had spoken to one of Nathan's old college friends, who seemed surprised that Ethan even existed. According to him, Nathan had spent years saying he never wanted children and that becoming a father would ruin his life. The comment stayed with Olivia because it didn't match the man who had seemed so determined to have a child during the surrogacy. The more Olivia looked back, the more unusual Nathan seemed. While Rachel had been deeply involved throughout the pregnancy, Nathan often appeared distant, supportive and polite, but emotionally detached. Even Benjamin admitted that Rachel had always seemed far more invested than Nathan. The memory left Olivia wondering if she had missed something important. A few weeks later, Aunt Linda shared another piece of information. A former neighbor had often heard Rachel accusing Nathan of lying during arguments. Nobody knew what the lies were about, but the same themes kept appearing again and again: secrets, fear, and deception. Somehow, Nathan seemed connected to all of it. At a family gathering, Olivia's Uncle Robert mentioned something else. Nathan had always cared deeply about appearances. He worried about what people thought of him, and often said that reputation was everything. Those words immediately caught Olivia's attention. What if the lies weren't only about fear? What if they were also about protecting an image? That night, Olivia realized something important. Nathan wasn't simply supporting Rachel's decisions. He seemed determined to protect a story that could fall apart if Ethan ever learned too much about the past. Whatever secret Nathan was hiding, it was important enough for him to sacrifice family relationships to keep it buried. As Olivia sat alone that evening, one thought refused to leave her mind. The center of the mystery wasn't Rachel. It wasn't Ethan. It was Nathan. Somewhere in his past was a truth he had spent years hiding. And sooner or later, that truth was going to come out. The first real clue arrived on an ordinary afternoon when Melissa called Olivia with unsettling news. A friend who worked at the fertility clinic had mentioned that Ethan's conception was not as straightforward as Rachel and Nathan had always claimed. There had been complications, failed embryo transfers, and questions involving donor material. Suddenly, the story everyone believed no longer seemed certain. The information left Olivia shaken. For years, she had assumed Ethan was biologically Rachel and Nathan's child. Now, doubts were appearing, and nobody seemed willing to explain them. The more she thought about it, the more convinced she became that a much bigger secret was hiding beneath the surface. A few weeks later, Aunt Linda shared another troubling detail. Rachel had visited her in tears, repeatedly saying the same thing. "If Ethan ever learns everything, he'll hate us." Those words changed everything for Olivia. She realized the problem was not that Ethan knew about the surrogacy. The problem was that he did not know the full story. For years, Rachel and Nathan had controlled what Ethan knew, who he saw, and what questions were answered. Suddenly, Olivia understood that the lies were never meant to protect Ethan. They were meant to protect Rachel and Nathan. As she looked through old photographs that night, Olivia noticed something she had missed before. Rachel always looked relieved, not just happy. It was as though Ethan's birth had solved a problem far greater than infertility. Whatever the truth was, it was powerful enough to create years of fear, secrecy, and broken relationships. By the end of the evening, Olivia knew one thing for certain. She still did not know the full truth, but she was closer than ever. The secret was beginning to crack, and sooner or later, everyone, including Ethan, would be forced to face it. Nearly 6 years after Ethan's birth, the carefully protected secret finally began to unravel. During their father's 70th birthday celebration, Ethan discovered an old pregnancy photo album. As he flipped through the pages, he noticed picture after picture of Olivia pregnant. "Why is Aunt Olivia in all these pictures?" he asked. The room fell silent. Then came the question Rachel had feared for years. Why does Aunt Olivia have a big tummy? Rachel quickly took the album away. But the damage was done. Ethan's curiosity had been awakened, and his questions only grew stronger in the weeks that followed. When his parents refused to give clear answers, he began asking other relatives instead, terrified by what might happen. Rachel finally visited Olivia for the first time in years. Exhausted and overwhelmed, she broke down in tears and admitted the truth. "I became afraid," she confessed. Afraid that Ethan would learn the truth. Afraid that he would grow closer to Olivia. Afraid that one day he might love the woman who carried him more than the woman who raised him. For the first time, Olivia understood what had destroyed their relationship. It wasn't surrogacy. It wasn't Ethan. It was fear. Fear had turned into lies, distance, and betrayal. dividing the entire family. But even as Rachel's secret came to light, another mystery remained. Nathan was still hiding something, and whatever he had kept buried for years was about to make the scandal even bigger than anyone imagined. After Rachel finally admitted that fear had driven her to push Olivia away, Olivia believed she finally understood what had happened. But she soon realized there was more to the story. A week later, Melissa called with shocking news. Rachel and Nathan were fighting constantly, and Nathan had even left home for several days. As more details emerged, the family learned that Nathan had been hiding secrets for years. Old emails, documents, and conversations revealed that he had not been completely honest, even with Rachel. The discovery devastated her. For years, she believed they had been protecting their family together. Now she realized Nathan had been protecting himself. Soon afterward, Rachel asked Olivia to meet. Sitting together in a quiet park, Rachel tearfully apologized for everything. She admitted that Olivia had never been the threat, and that fear had led her to destroy the relationship between them. Then, she revealed something even more troubling. "I thought we were protecting our family," Rachel said. But Nathan was protecting himself. Although Rachel still didn't know the full truth, she knew she had been betrayed. When Olivia asked if she regretted the years of lies, distance, and pain, Rachel answered honestly, "Every day." As they parted, Rachel admitted she was no longer afraid of Ethan learning the truth. She was afraid of what he would think afterward. For the first time in years, Olivia didn't see Rachel as an enemy. She saw a frightened woman whose fear had destroyed the very thing she wanted to protect. But one problem still remained: Nathan's secrets. And soon, Ethan would begin asking questions that nobody could avoid. By the time Ethan turned 13, he had become curious and observant. The more he noticed how uncomfortable people became whenever Aunt Olivia's name came up, the more questions he asked. At first, Rachel avoided them. When Ethan asked why they never saw Olivia anymore, or why she appeared in so many baby photos, he received vague answers that never satisfied him. The secrecy only made him more determined to learn the truth. Eventually, Ethan began searching on his own. Old photos, social media posts, and family memories all seemed to point toward the same mystery. Olivia appeared everywhere during the months before his birth, far more than any ordinary aunt. Then, one afternoon, while helping his grandfather clean the attic, Ethan discovered a scrapbook labeled with his name. Inside were ultrasound photos, medical appointments, and countless pictures of Olivia pregnant. As he turned the pages, the truth became impossible to ignore. When his grandfather returned, Ethan looked up and quietly asked, "Was she carrying me?" After a long silence, his grandfather nodded. Yes. The answer changed everything. Ethan wasn't upset that Olivia had carried him. What troubled him was realizing that everyone had hidden it for years. For the first time, he understood that the real mystery wasn't his birth. It was the years of silence that followed. Determined to learn the full truth, Ethan made a decision. Instead of asking adults who avoided his questions, he would go directly to the one person he believed would finally be honest with him: Aunt Olivia. After discovering the truth in his grandfather's attic, Ethan couldn't stop thinking about it. Learning that Olivia had carried him wasn't upsetting. What hurt was realizing that everyone had hidden it from him for years. That night, unable to ignore his questions any longer, Ethan sent Olivia a message. "Hi, Aunt Olivia. It's Ethan." Her reply came almost immediately. "Ethan, it's really you." As they exchanged messages, Ethan felt something he hadn't felt in a long time: honesty. When he finally asked if she had carried him before he was born, Olivia answered with a single word. Yes. No excuses, no avoidance, just the truth. When Ethan asked why nobody had told him, Olivia replied carefully, "That isn't my story to tell." The conversation lasted for hours. The more they talked, the more Ethan realized Olivia was nothing like the person he had been led to believe she was. She wasn't bitter or possessive. She was kind, patient, and respectful. Before the conversation ended, Ethan asked one final question. "Why did we stop seeing each other?" Olivia answered simply, "I think that's a question your parents should answer." The next morning, Ethan sat down at breakfast and looked directly at Rachel and Nathan. "Why didn't you tell me about Aunt Olivia?" The color drained from Rachel's face. Nathan froze. In that moment, Ethan knew they understood exactly what he had discovered. The secret they had hidden for years was finally out, and for the first time, Rachel and Nathan could no longer avoid the truth. At breakfast, Ethan finally confronted his parents. "I know Aunt Olivia carried me," he said. "I want the truth." Rachel admitted that Olivia had carried him before he was born. But Ethan already knew that. What he wanted to understand was why Olivia had disappeared from his life. After years of avoiding the question, Rachel finally confessed. "I was afraid that one day Ethan would learn the truth and love Olivia more than her, afraid that he would see Olivia as his real mother." Ethan was stunned. "You think I would stop loving you because someone helped bring me into the world?" For the first time, Rachel realized how much fear had controlled her decisions. What she had called protection had really been control. She had tried to control Ethan's questions, his relationships, and the truth itself. Then, Ethan turned to Nathan and asked if he had agreed with everything. Nathan quietly nodded, revealing his own guilt. Later, Ethan realized that the real problem had never been the surrogacy. It had been the years of fear, lies, and secrecy that followed. When he returned home that evening, Rachel was waiting for him, terrified that she had lost him forever. Instead, Ethan sat beside her and quietly said, "You're still my mom." Rachel burst into tears. The words she had spent years fearing she would lose had finally been spoken. But even as mother and son began to heal, another secret remained. Nathan still hadn't told the whole truth, and soon Ethan would discover that his father's secret was even bigger than his mother's fear. A few days after Ethan learned the truth about Olivia, he noticed that Nathan seemed distant and uneasy whenever the past was discussed. One evening, Ethan asked Rachel if his father was still hiding something. After a long silence, Rachel quietly answered, "Yes, I think it's time he tells you himself." 2 days later, Nathan took Ethan to a quiet lake where they had often spent time together. After sitting in silence for several minutes, Nathan finally spoke. "I owe you the truth." He explained that during their struggle to have a child, the family had been told infertility was the problem. But that wasn't the whole story. "The doctors discovered that I couldn't have biological children." Ethan was shocked. For years, people had assumed Rachel was responsible, and Nathan had allowed them to believe it. "I was ashamed," Nathan admitted. "I let your mother carry that burden." Then came the secret Nathan had hidden for 14 years. The clinic used a donor. Ethan stared at him. "You are Rachel's biological son, but I am not your biological father." The confession changed everything. Suddenly, years of fear, secrecy, and control made sense. Nathan's eyes filled with tears. "I love you. I raised you. I was there for every important moment of your life. No DNA test will ever change that. Despite the shock, Ethan knew it was true. Nathan had been his father in every way that mattered. As they sat beside the lake, Ethan realized that the real problem had never been surrogacy. It had been the years of secrets that followed. For the first time in many years, the truth was finally out in the open. Now the family had to decide whether they could heal and move forward together.